everybody. It's Stephanie with the Learning Project Network again, back with another great podcast series. Listen, I have one of the doulas that I literally have been following for a very long time, y'all. I love her content. She's so amazing, inviting, friendly, connecting, education beyond. I mean, you are going to really experience something really different today, you guys. And so I want to introduce Doula Lo, y'all. Give it up for her. I'm so excited you were here. I'm so honored. First of all, y'all know it's Black Maternal Health Week. You know I love Black Maternal Health Week. It is an opportunity for us to amplify Black voices, to share those experiences that we typically do not experience. But, you know, we are on this mission to make a change and really crush the crisis. And so there are so many amazing doulas out here in our communities that are doing amazing things. And Doula Lo saw that I had posted something about one of our podcast series, and she was like, let me in the game, coach. She didn't really say that, but when I saw like, I'm interested, I took it as that.
Yeah.
Sure. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. That was a really great intro. I don't even have the words for like how great that was, because you really just, you gave the energy to it. So thank you for that. I'm happy to be here. When I saw it, when I saw the post that you made about the podcast, I've done lots of other podcast talks, and like for Black Maternal Health Week, I think it's just good that doulas, we come and educate people on the, because we're the front line, we're out there doing the work hands-on. So we're we're seeing these experiences firsthand. So when we get that chance to finally like speak to other people about it, it really just passes the message and the education along. So yeah, I'm always happy to do these podcast talks because they're very educational. And why hold that knowledge from so many people that can benefit from it, like in their own birth experiences or their own postpartum experiences or their own fertility journeys or whatever the case may be. On the opposite end of that spectrum, maybe miscarriage and loss or abortion. So all of those places need support, but it's good to always talk about it and have doulas that can share those experiences and educate other people about it.
Absolutely. Okay, listen, you guys, if you're not watching the video, you're seeing me hold back as Doula Lo is just like speaking truth right now. Because a lot of times when we are looking at Black Maternal Health Week, there's conversations that are like, well, what about all birthing people? What about all these people? Listen, Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die due to pregnancy-related issues than white women. 60% of those causes are preventable. Let me say that again. 60% of them are preventable. So what are we going to do differently? What kind of conversations are we introducing? How are we using lived experiences to amplify these experiences and make change? That's where really these podcasts come in of Girl, Get A Doula. I know also some of you guys may be hearing my new intro to Girl, Get A Doula, Doula La. Yes, I love Lauryn Hill, and Doula Lo, her name is Lauren, so it just happened. I promise it was not like made for Doula Lo, but it's made for the doulas. So you are going to hear that. So I just had to put a little plug in there real quick for the new podcast jingle. So let's jump into it. So Doula Lo, what made you get into this? Like, this is a very unique field. One, we're fighting on the front lines for doulas on this side because doulas do not get paid enough. Even if they got Medicaid, you guys always see me have my shirt on House Bill 1881. There's so much work that needs to be done on that House Bill. It is not just, you get Medicaid and now you can get paid. Exactly. Everybody knows that Medicaid pays nothing. So let's have the conversation before we have to have the conversation. Right. So that's second thing there. And the third thing is you are in Seattle. Is that correct?
CTEC, but yeah.
CTEC, right there. So, all of our doula spaces are very different. And so learning and understanding how doula worlds are impacted in different cities is extremely important. And that's true, unique, and customized advocacy. So tell us a little bit about how did you get into this field? Like, what drew you to this?
Yeah. So in terms of what drew me to it, realistically, I always get this question, so the answer is always the same. But I love answering this question because I think it speaks to how this is an ancestral practice, because for me, this felt like it's always been a part of my life before I knew what the word doula was. I've always supported women through pregnancy. I've always been that person that was around the babies, helping take care of the babies, helping take care of the mom. I've always stepped into kind of that like maternal role in a way without having my own children. And I'm the oldest sister of 5 other kids. So I've seen children be born. I've been at births. I've seen multiple styles of pregnancies because none of my mom's pregnancies were the same. None of her births were the same. They were all vaginal births, but each experience was different. But I vividly remember all the medical interventions I saw her go through. And so then as I got older and started to wonder like what pregnancy looked like and what birth looked like, and then kind of along that same lines, I just knew that I didn't want to have children because of what I've seen. But then fast forward like in my 20s and things like that, after I graduated, which I graduated during the pandemic, I graduated as a therapist. So I have my degree in therapeutic recreation. So I'm a therapist, but I also work in somatic therapy. I also work in perinatal mental health. So I'm a therapist in very many various ways.
I love it.
But I wanted to use that work in a different way. It just didn't seem, all the places where I could have worked as those type of therapists that I was finding was all people that didn't look like me. So then it was just kind of weird because one day one of my very close friends and sisters, and her daughter is my goddaughter, she was like, I want you to be my doula when I decide to have a baby. You should be a doula. And I was like, what the heck is a doula? And then I looked it up and I was like, oh, I've already been doing this. Like, I know exactly what that is. And I was like, okay, so how do you start in this work? And then that's when I found Dona. And, if you know about Dona, Dona is a great organization in itself for like what it can provide, but overall the curriculum we know is very flawed and needs work.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I appreciate my trainer that I had through Dona, but of course, like Dona is just Dona. Yeah, I trained through Dona. And after leaving my training, I felt like I didn't really know what to do because I had so much information that I just took in. And of course, then I went into imposter syndrome of like, I don't have my own children. So how am I going to support people through pregnancy and birth and fertility when I have never had that experience? I've never been pregnant. I've, never went through that. So it's just like, dang. So then I like held myself off for like 6 months to a year, even taking clients. But through that time, I sat with myself in the work. And I was like, you don't have to have children of your own to know how to take care of children because you've been doing it. You've been like the second parent to your siblings your entire life. You've seen pregnancy. You've seen, the birth of a placenta. You've seen, rupturing of membranes. You've seen how epidurals work and don't work. Like you've seen all of these things before. You've supported women in lactation. I remember my first experience supporting a woman in lactation. She was actually a Spanish-speaking woman in a prison. And nobody could help her figure out why she was so engorged and in pain. And so I had to explain that to her in Spanish, but also help the people who spoke English. I had to kind of do like a double translation of like saying what they were saying to her in English and Spanish, and saying what she was saying in Spanish to them in English. And I was 17 when I did that.
Wow.
So it's been things like that and that was down in Kentucky, actually. I had moved there for a couple of years of my teenage life, but I was doing just like little work like that. And so when I hit my 20s and it all came full circle, I was like, Lauren, you've been doing this. Your ancestors have been calling you to this your entire life. And so here we are now. I've accepted the calling and embraced it. And it was so scary when I finally said, Lauren, you can do this. And when I finally took my first client, which when I first started my travel doula work, I was traveling. So I've been to different states and attended births. And so I've gotten to see, just like you said, how doula communities are impacted in various cities and states. I've gotten to see how that happens. My very first birth was during COVID, and the hospital tried to keep me out of the birth space. And it was so traumatic for me because I was like, this is my first birth, this is my first mama. I've traveled all the way here from Washington to come to Detroit and help this mama give birth. And I'm like fighting with the security guards. I'm like fighting with administrative staff, like let me up there. She's already like ready to push by the time we get to the hospital. And that experience right there shaped me even more like, you got to keep going because this is exactly what they're going to keep doing.
I gotta put a pin in this. I have got
Yes.
to put a pin in this.
Yes,
Like,
please, because I'm like,
literally,
here I go on a
no.
tangent. It gets so
Listen,
real.
no, listen, like there's a couple things that are going through my mind. First of all, Stephanie, don't say anything because you gotta let her finish this story. And then two, you guys, listen, I'm just gonna give a real shout out to Synergy. I got the raw kombucha. Listen, my whole mouth is like covered in orange. It's the carrot and turmeric, y'all. I just want to give a shout out. It's good. You give it a little
Okay. I love kombucha. No,
but your tongue
kombucha
is
is
gonna
good.
turn
I love
orange.
that
So
brand.
yeah, go ahead, sis. I had the coconut water yesterday. I went through 3 bottles yesterday. I was like, I am feeling so dehydrated right now.
I love
And
coconut
so
water.
listen, when you were talking, okay, when you were speaking and you were talking about this work calling you, I think the one thing that we're not having enough conversation about is sometimes the work calls you, but you have to also do the work within yourself, right? You have, because we're taking on so much energy. When you are helping people with birth or loss or infertility, there is a set of energy that comes with all of those experiences. It is the recognition that they need something more and they need a certain emotional connection or guidance through something. And I talk about this a lot. For those that have followed me, know I've dealt with infertility. I've dealt with that for over 7 years. And that I kind of went through the same thing where I was like, how can I help people? And I don't have children of my own. Like, I don't know what this feels like. I don't know what I'm doing. But there's different types of mothering. And that is something that we don't even speak on. There's only one way to mother, and that's it. But there's a book, I would talk about it a lot, The Fourth Trimester by Kimberly Johnson. And she says that quote, when the mother has a child, it's time for the mother to be mothered. It does not say a biological mother. It does not say a person who has given birth or have had loss. It says a mother. There's something into us that's that nurturing or that intuition or that thing that connects us. You know what I mean? And so when you're talking about that, that really resonated with me in your journey. And people need to understand that this work is not a work that you can just plug into and just be anywhere. You have to learn how to make the connections with the people on a deep level. And that takes a lot of vulnerability, not only from the person, but also from the doula. And the doula has to do a lot of work. So for you, as you're like going through this process of becoming a doula, learning about yourself, really stepping up to your calling and your purpose, what was the one thing that you had to continually tell yourself to overcome that imposter and syndrome that you spoke about? Because that's a whole podcast series in itself.
Oh yeah. The Black woman imposter syndrome.
Woo!
It's real because you just feel like you have to carry so much and you feel like you have to do it all.
Yeah.
And you feel like you have to do it all by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the crappy part. So in the beginning, in which I still struggle with this from time to time, I'm still a human healing and growing.
All day, every day. Me too.
But in the beginning when I started, I just felt like, okay, if I've learned all of this and went through this training and it's like, I got to figure out how to get my feet on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think about that I needed to have other people around me to help me get my feet on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I realized, okay, I need to get me a mentor. Okay, I need to get me, I need to find a support community of other doulas that I can talk to about issues that I'm having and questions that I have that I didn't get in my training and things like that. And so now I'm in over hundreds of different like doula support groups, and we are all helping each other, sharing knowledge, helping each other like with client issues that they've never experienced before and different things like that, like grievances and all the things. So it's things like that where just having that support around me of other doulas where it's like, you're not alone, I go through this too.
Mm-hmm.
And also meeting other doulas that also don't have children and are doing this work and are like powerhouses in it. It was great to see that. So that helped me really get my mind around, okay, Lauren, there are other people who are doing exactly what you want to do.
Yeah.
You have to put your best foot forward. And so, and it was also crazy too, because in the midst of the pandemic, I moved here from Michigan. So I made so many life transitions at the same time.
Yeah.
And I knew it was all happening for a reason. Because when I moved here, I was like, how the heck am I going to get clientele? And I just became a doula and I'm in a new state. I don't know anybody. Wow. And I didn't even know what the Black population looked like in Washington. So I was like, risky.
Yes,
So
and depending on what side of the mountain you were on, you will have some shock.
Right. And I wasn't sure which side of the mountain I was on. So I was like, so I told my wife, I was like, okay, babe, listen, I got to make this work somehow, some way. So I got to figure out like, where's my clientele going to be?
Yeah.
And then I don't know how it all came. I think I started to get into like Doulas for All Coalition.
Yes.
I started to get into some other like Black birth worker groups on like Facebook. And then from there, people would like ask me to be a part of events. Well, I initially put my interest towards being a part of an event, and I got to hold a meditation space for that event. And then from there, everybody that I've met at that event since then, I still currently work with and know, and like do so many events together. We're always sharing each other's things and like putting each other's names out there in community. And so I would like to say that I've built a really great community around me, just like from the ground up, honestly. And it's been beautiful to see because there's so many people around Washington who can say like, you know, they've worked with me, or I've trained them in something, or I've been their doula, whether that's birth, postpartum, fertility, loss, abortion. Like, so it's just beautiful to see that like I did exactly what I thought I couldn't do. And like I'm
that again for the person in the back that missed
I know, right? I'm watching myself do everything I thought I couldn't do. And every day I tell myself that I have to keep telling myself that I can do these things that feel impossible. Because that imposter syndrome can just feel like a weight on your shoulders. It can feel like all the fear in the world is consuming you, because why can't I put myself to do this task? Or why can't I motivate myself to do it? And so it's just crazy how when you get out of your own way, things just really align for you in abundance. And I always say I'm always walking with spirit in this work. So nothing that I do is by coincidence. Nothing that I do is out of my control. Honestly, it's all in divine alignment and in my ancestors. So it's all what it's supposed to be, and it's just going to keep aligning in abundance. So I'm thankful for where Lo Holistics has gone. I see it going a lot further. I currently have a queer Black and Brown mentorship program for people who want to learn holistic doula work. So I currently am getting a new cohort of mentees. Since having my program, I started in 2021. I've mentored over 20 plus doulas. I'm keeping my cohort small this year because I've mentored those doulas over various states and countries. And so now I'm trying to like kind of hone it into smaller, intimate groups and be able to like really just kind of focus on specifically just like the queer Black and brown folks and the doulas who are really trying to do this work but really don't know where to start. So
I love it. I love it. Can you tell us again the name of your business?
Yes, Lo Holistics.
I love it. I just want to make sure that everybody hears that. That way you can write it down. I know some of you guys are driving. So I know some of you guys are at your office listening to this podcast. We want to make sure that you get the information so that you know who you can connect with and how you can connect with them. And so, Lo, when you're like looking over everything, your journey, when you look at your business specifically, what does your organization or business do really well? When you think about why people choose you, this is really important for my listeners that are choosing a doula. Like one of the things that we just see is we see somebody and we're like, oh, can you be my doula? And then you get in there with them and then you're like, oh, I'm ready for her or him or them to get up out of here. Like I need them to leave. I do not want a doula no more. So tell us a little bit about what your organization focuses on, what you do really well, and let's go from there.
So I would say that because Lo Holistics is a one-woman show right now, I hope to add a team very soon here. But because I'm currently just a one-woman show, everything I do is based on the energetic connection that I'm getting with that person that I'm trying to work with, or even the spirit of that baby that I'm trying to work with, because that's also important. I'm not just working with the mom and the dad, or the parent and, non-binary parent. We also are including our non-binary people, our queer folk, because not everybody that, has a womb identifies as a woman.
Correct.
but still the womb space is the portal to the earth. So we still acknowledge, you know, our mamas in conjunction with our people who do not identify as that.
Absolutely.
So that's also important too. We like to focus on including all of our people that are giving birth. And that does not in any way, shape, or form take away from anybody. So you will hear me sometimes say mama and mothers, and sometimes I'll just say parent or, you know, things like that. I'll be non-binary because that's just the way I feel like there can be a both and, like you can do both and both are still valid. There doesn't have to be only
and I
address
just gotta
one.
chime in on this. You shouldn't even say that, Lo. Like I have to chime in on that. I talk about this a lot where when I speak from a Black cis woman's perspective, right?
Yeah.
And I had a question come up to me one time and they were like, well, you know, why would you say woman? Why are you not saying birthing people? And I said, you have to remember historically, Black women did not own their own bodies. They did not own their own children. They didn't even have an opportunity to be mothers. So that story and that connection for me is I feel like I'm called to that. But when it comes to us looking at the whole spectrum of Blackness or the whole spectrum of maternal health, we have got to have a bigger and broader conversation because it's not just this Black and white situation. This is something that we need to have and be educated on even the more. And so I'm so glad that you brought that up. And I'm so glad that you're really figuring out how do we hone in on this and provide the right resources and the right spaces and the right training to people who are supporting other types of birthing people, because you can cause harm to someone because you don't know what you're doing, or you haven't been trained, or you haven't had those conversations and you want to be an ally, or you want to just be like involved versus actually getting educated and really understanding how lived experiences need to be represented in a genuine way. So I just had to say that. I literally just had that conversation with someone.
Yeah, it's a conversation, man, and it's just something that we have to have healthy dialogue around, because when people approach it with no, you should only say this versus, well, why do you say this, as opposed to this, and just out of curiosity as opposed to emotionally attacking, it's like, well, everybody's living in a different reality. Like you said, a cisgender perspective is different from somebody that's non-binary. It's not to say that we can't all learn from each other still. It's to say that inherently cisgender conversation is centered around cisgender talk. And so that's something that cisgender people have to work on as a collective. And yeah, you know, some people got it, some people don't. It's not to say like to attack people who are still learning that, but it's also like educate without attacking type of thing. So that part. I was like, I appreciate education, but like to attack people is not okay.
No, I'm really glad that you said that, and that resonates with me, and I hope it resonates with you guys as you're listening. And so you were sharing that you have your training set up, and you said you're a one-woman band right now. So what are some of the services that you provide?
So I do birth support, I do postpartum support, I have supported people through their fertility journey. I also do abortion care. I have done miscarriage and loss. I do not do it as frequently just because that's a heavy space to be in often, especially when I'm also attending to people in births and postpartum. It's just too many spaces to put my body in at one time. So
the energy, and people don't talk enough about that. And that's really big in African culture, Black culture. You don't go into different spaces and move that energy.
Nope. Yeah. And so and also encompassing with that, I do like placenta care. I do other like energy work, ritual and ceremonies for mom and baby. I'm also an herbalist. So, you know, I make herbal blends, steams, teas, all the things, tinctures.
I love it.
Pretty much anything that you can possibly think of. Even if I haven't tried to make it yet, I know that I can make it. I just haven't had a reason to yet. So it's things like that where I also am trying to incorporate my own spiritual practices into my work. That's a big thing about Lo Holistics, because I chose holistics because I put my holistic practices within it. So like herbal care and yoga and meditation, those are also things that I offer. You can do prenatal yoga with me. You can do postpartum yoga with me. meditation at either time. I do like sound bowl healing.
Oh,
Um,
wonderful.
yeah, I'll do like
Yeah.
guided prenatal meditations and things where I've even had people just kind of rest in their beds, and I just have kind of a meditative tune going, and I'm just giving them verbal cues through their meditation on like how to kind of sink into it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I gotta put another pin in this because
Oh
I
no,
know
girl, you're
somebody out here is
good.
listening and they're like, why the heck do people need to do this? Why do people need to have someone to help them through meditation and rest and sound bowl? What? Like, why
Yeah,
do they need all this stuff? Like back in the day, we were just out here having the baby and moving on and
I
doing
know.
whatever.
Yep.
What would you say to the person that's saying, why is this so important, the services that you listed off?
Yeah, I mean, that's not even all of them. Honestly, there's a plethora of things that I do, but it's a long list. Um, but for people that do, like, I get that question all the time, honestly, just from even like families that like purchase one of my packages that has that a part of it. And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, how can I utilize this? What do I utilize it for? When do I use it? So we have that conversation about meditation is a way to help you learn to relax your body, ground
Yep.
yourself, connect back with your body. A lot of times people who with birth traumas, that can help in a way. I like to do more like somatic therapy with people who have birth traumas because when you get them back in their body, they have to let that experience surface and then you help them work through it. My thing about
Mm.
energy work is that I find that a lot of energy workers can sometimes bring things to surface, but not help people kind of dissolve that or
Mm.
transmute that energy in a way.
Yep.
Um, so just bringing things to surface is one thing, but helping people transmute that energy is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
So that's oftentimes what meditation or somatic therapy can do. So sometimes I'll have my families will dance together to some type of music, or I have the partners dance together to some type of music. We'll do some type of like gentle flow or
Uh-huh.
restorative yoga flow. Um, Sometimes I'll come and do like kind of like an energy point touch on the body. I'm sure people call it various things in different cultures. If anything is similar to Reiki, I do not practice Reiki. My spiritual practice and my traditional lineage is Hoodoo.
Mm.
So what I do with what I do with my hands would in modern day look like Reiki or be called Reiki, but that is not what we call it in Hoodoo.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, we call it laying hands or just
Yeah.
energy work or conjure work or
Yeah.
root work. So a lot of times I'll do that. I'll just, work with different energy points on their body as they kind of just lay or relax in a way, or I'll do those energy points around baby on the belly.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to baby mapping, I will do some baby like mapping too, but also just some energy points around baby. Because it's also important that as a doula, you connect with the baby you're working with. Like it
Yes.
is also a
Yes.
spirit. You
Yeah.
have to connect with the baby you're working with. And that's also for postpartum doulas. You connect with the baby because now they're here in the physical. So if you are only doing postpartum, you get to connect with that baby already in physical. But
Mm-hmm.
if you are birth and postpartum, sometimes you get to transfer over from birth to postpartum with a family. And so you need to have that energetic connection with that baby.
Yeah.
Like you need to in some way let them know like who you are,
Yep.
who you like what your intentions are coming into also their birthing space.
Mm-hmm.
You are connecting with the person that carries them and gives them life. And so you also need to be giving some type of good energy to that person because that
Yeah.
transfers to baby as well. So it's a whole thing that I could go into, but that is the spirit of birth work. And that is also what Low Holistics is. That is who I am. Low
Yeah.
Holistics is me. Low Holistics. It is the ancestral and sacred practices brought back to birth work. And it is also cultural congruent care for the people that
Love
need
it.
that and don't have it. It is bridging the gap to doula access to
Yeah.
Black. It is bridging the gap to people who've lost their connection to their ancestral practices and birth work,
Yes.
or how their ancestors birthed, or how their ancestors went through postpartum. And those
Yep.
ancestors could be alive or not alive, and that is okay. But you have to understand that there is a past compared to what we are doing now, and it is not
Absolutely.
the normal. What we're doing now is not the normal.
Mm-mm. No, it's
So
not.
yeah.
And I think that was such a rich conversation, y'all. Listen, this, so you guys all know my Girl Get a Doula podcast. It has so many different doulas. Like there are so many different doulas that do, like their backgrounds are different, their spiritual lives are different, their cultures. I mean, listen, if you want to hear some stuff, you're gonna come on this podcast and you're gonna listen to a bunch of different stuff. But the thing that I think that you said just now that really I want it to resonate with you all listening, which is understanding how much spiritual work goes into birthing. And I think one of the reasons why this is so overlooked or it's like in a mystical place is because we can't quantify it by numbers. When you can't quantify an experience by numbers, it loses its value. And when you come into this world or you're birthing in this world, this is something that cannot be quantified by numbers. And that's why it's really important for you to know the type of doula you want to have in your space. It is important for you to understand how that connection is going to provide this transition. And getting a doula doesn't mean that you're not going to have anything bad happen, right? Doesn't mean that there's not things that are going to impact your labor, pregnancy, any of that. What a doula does is act as a guide, educational resource, supportive resource, an advocate for you. A lot of doulas, depending on the state that they're in, we talk a lot about doulas cannot advocate medically, verbally in hospitals. In some hospitals, there's very strict rules around doulas. There's other spaces where doulas can say things to nurses and doctors or certain hospitals. We want to make sure that whatever it is or whoever you choose someone that is aligned to what you're trying to reconnect. And when I had my daughter, my number one thing was to reconnect with cultural practices around birth, around healing. You know, I went through so much trauma. Sometimes we're just so focused on that labor and birth that we don't realize like there's a lot of healing that has to be done, even healing those mother wounds or father wounds. When you're becoming what you had struggled with identifying and connecting with. Lo, what's the one thing that you feel that a full spectrum doula is able to partner or emotionally support another person on? We talk a lot about nurses and doctors, like they cannot emotionally support a person the way they need to. It's just not going to happen. And I would even say some midwives don't have time to do that either. If there are tons of people having babies at the same time and you need emotional support, your doula is going to be your person. And so what's one, this is a better question. What's one way people can help their families open up emotionally when they are working with a doula? You can have all the doulas you want in the world, but if people are not mentally, physically, and educationally and emotionally ready for that person to come and help support them, it is going to feel like the biggest waste of time. How would you talk to someone about that? Like, what can people do to help get an individual open up to being receptive to a doula and reconnecting with their cultural practices?
So a lot of times I say like these relationships are also reflective. So you also your doula can only give you as much as you allow them to give. And your doula will also only give as much as you're willing to receive. So it's just like, it's like we kind of just like can only meet you where you're at. Because we will never, I mean, at least I will not speak for all doulas because, you know, all doulas practice differently. But I'm not a doula that will push you to a decision, especially if you are set in that decision. If anything, I can only give you education around the decision you're making, the risks and benefits of the decision you're making, alternatives to that decision. And then from there, if all is said and done and you still say that's your decision, like that's what it is. I can only advocate for you and support you through that. And that's what the doula does. We do not in any way make decisions for our families. We should not be, because at the end of the day, unless you're put in a space where like and I say that when I'm talking about like doula clients who, you know, have a partner or a support system around them. If you are working with like teen moms or like single moms,
Yeah.
or like single by choice moms who are like
Yep.
queer or non-binary that are doing IUI or IVF, and
Mm-hmm.
you may be their only person with them, and
Yeah.
to also make decisions. That's a different scenario, because then you guys talked about what decisions you are making and not making. And
Mm-hmm.
like and when you're making those decisions, like if it's a time where they're like, really tired or not feeling like talking to the staff, like, and then that's your space, cool.
Yep.
But otherwise, like if there's other people that person has to support them, those are the next people in the line of advocacy or like speaking up for that person, because you should only
Mm-hmm.
have to do that in the terms of like, at least I think that you should only have to really step in and say anything when both parents are not being heard.
Yes.
Or if like everybody in the
Yes.
room with the family that is closest of kin to them or closest in support system to them is not being heard, then that is your time to step in and
Yep.
say, okay, I've heard multiple people kind of address this to you, and I've seen that you're not really listening. And this really happens in hospitals. Like, I have not had this experience in home births. I've not had this experience in birthing centers. For whatever godforsaken reason, it is hospitals. And we have our hospitals. Hospitals have their space. Medical interventions have their need when it's time. Everything has their place.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we know that for Black folks and brown bodies, hospitals were not made for us. We were
No.
not allowed to give birth there for until like the early 19 something.
Yep.
Grandmother was born in 1954, and she just was telling me a story about how she couldn't check out books from the library because she was Black.
Yep.
And it's just, and it made me think back and like, well, you were born in 1954 and people been giving birth in hospitals for how long? And I'm like,
Say it.
hold up. I was like, so ain't no way they were allowing Black people to give birth in hospitals if you couldn't even
No.
check out books. So it's things like that where I'm like, all right, so whatever has happened to where we've now gotten our minds so indoctrined around hospitals is the only way to birth,
Yeah.
also created that shift in people connecting back to their cultural practices, because people are like, well, everybody I know got an epidural. Everybody I know went to the hospital.
Yep.
Everybody I know got their membranes ruptured.
Yep.
Everybody I know, had this done, and it all has to do with a medical intervention
Yes.
in the hospital.
Yep.
It's so scary to see, because it's like I've personally witnessed families reconnect back to themselves and have a completely different birth experience than their first one,
Mm-hmm.
because they allowed themselves to fully invest in their body, their mind, their spirit, the
Yep.
education around what to do that they didn't know last time. And
Yep.
of course, as a first-time parent, there's going to be so much you don't know. So that can be
Yeah.
overwhelming.
Yes.
But ultimately, having a doula that can like be there to support you through all the basic questions. I still have first-time moms that message me now, and their baby is a year old. And that is
Wow.
okay, because you're gonna have questions. And
Yes.
the second time around, you won't have those same questions. You'll have a whole set of new questions. So
Yes.
it's never gonna look the same. And to have a doula that can explain to you, let these changes happen. Like you have
Yes.
support around you. I'm here to help you do this. Like I'm here to, if you need this resource, I'm here to guide you through this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to help you be hands-on in this way. Like as a full
Mm-hmm.
spectrum doula, I'm also a lactation peer counselor. So I can help people. I assist a lot of moms with their first latch. So in that first hour after baby is snuggled on your chest and
Yeah.
just, they start suckling on their tongue and they're ready for, to try latching. I help mom get that very first latch and learn the positioning and
Yeah.
figure out a good position for them. And then when they transition home, we do another run through that. And, people are sending me pictures and videos of like how much milk they got for their pump session and how good baby is doing, like feeding on the breast and how like
Yes.
much better their latch has gotten. And that's not to say, and I'm not an IBCLC. IBCLCs are above me. But I've been taught by IBCLCs and
Yes.
Black Indigenous IBCLCs at that. And
Yeah.
so they have taught me a plethora of knowledge that I've been able to use for families and supporting them in their lactation. And we know that Black and brown moms, their lactation issues oftentimes get missed, dismissed, swept
Yep.
under the rug,
Yep.
anything like that. And then they're left high and dry, and then they stop their breastfeeding journey way, way early. I'm starting to hear a lot more Black and brown moms are stopping their breastfeeding journey at like 6 months.
Absolutely.
Or
Absolutely.
even less. And it's really sad, because then these babies are put on these chemical and toxic filled formulas. And it's like,
Yes.
again, formulas have their place, because
Yep.
there are some moms who really have a hard time with breastfeeding. That is
Yeah.
a separate scenario.
Yep.
But just for people to not have the right support and education around lactation can do wonders for somebody keeping their supply up
Absolutely.
and having a healthy breastfeeding or chest feeding journey.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, like the more you know, the better you can do. And that's why this knowledge has to keep going around. That's why it's good to have doulas that, have this plethora of knowledge. And that's not to say, and sometimes you don't have to take, and I also will say this for doulas, you don't have to take a plethora of trainings to have all this knowledge.
Exactly.
Sometimes you can literally just pick up a book and it'll all be right there. Sometimes you can watch some videos, some movies, and read some books, and all that knowledge will correspond for you right there. We're in a technological era where really you don't have to do as many trainings as people are footing the bill for, because these trainings get so costly. And then you have all this knowledge you're sitting on, and it's like, well, dang, what do I do with it? As opposed to a lot of it, you kind of all like, I always tell people, like, your ancestors already know you, they're waiting for you to remember them. And so as soon as you do that, there's so many practices or ideas or creations that just kind of flow in because you were already supposed to know it. You were already supposed to remember it. And you always align with the people who have the same knowledge you're looking for, who may even be able to swap things with you. I do a lot of like trade for trade things. Like, you teach me this, I teach you that. Like, and it can be that simple. We can go back to keeping things that simple and keeping our knowledge shared around our community so we all have the same way to help our people. Yeah. Because as soon as nobody is saying, well, nobody really needs to connect back to their ancestral practices, it's like, that's kind of where everybody's at. It shouldn't be that way, because I know a handful of doulas who are on the same page as me, like connecting back to your practices, but there's also a handful they're like, well, medical is the way, that's the only way I've ever known it, or they've been trained by an organization that specifically goes only over medical, which is a lot of them. Yeah. Because I can say I didn't know anything about like how to attend a home birth until I attended a home birth. From leaving my doula training.
Let me tell you this story. Lo, I don't even know if I even told y'all this, the listeners, viewers, this story ever. Okay. And everything you just said, again, like I was so excited about this interview because
me too.
I'm so serious, because I just think that we don't have the real conversations around what is being a doula and what does this look like. There are so many, for one, I mean, let's talk about the villaination of doulas, especially Black doulas, and especially doulas who implement cultural practices. We don't talk about that. There's a lot of deconstruction we have to do, okay? And there is a lot of conversation that needs to go around about the power of reconnecting with your culture. It's like, it reminds me of Dana, isn't Green? No, he's the one that wrote the conversations around the call to Africa, and he was like, it was like back like during the Black Panther Party, and he was like really calling Black people to go back to Africa, learn about their roots. Those are the things that are going to ground you. And within our communities, we have a mixture of things because we come from very multicultural backgrounds. We come from very multicultural communities. And then some of us have been raised in certain cultures, and it just resonates with us. It's who we are. It's how we navigate and move in the world. And we can't neglect any of that. We have to remember that there are places that are designed and developed for us to grow and develop in certain spaces. What does that mean? What are you talking about, Stephanie? What I'm saying is, when you are going through a transition of life, whether it be loss or pregnancy or trying to have a child, you are going through a physical, mental, spiritual transition. And until we recognize that and really say to our community, hey, we have doctors and nurses out here that are doing a great job, right? But we have a whole bunch that are not. Or we have a whole bunch that don't even know what's going on because they're so heavy book content that they're missing all of these rich resources that they should be advising other people to go to and connect with. But again, that is going to require us to tear down power, for us to give up power, for us to share power, for us to share spaces, and then also recognize when these things are not an emergency and they don't need to go in the hospital. Exactly. We need to have spaces where people are having time to give birth and they're able to do it on their own terms. And there's not this rush to hurry up and push. One of the things that I had saw right away with crushing the crisis around Black maternal health is infection. We know that's one of the leading causes for Black women dying unnecessarily. I tell you guys all the time, my personal story of getting an infection, my doula told me to go to the hospital. I didn't know there was anything wrong. And then when I realized that there was something wrong, I went into the hospital and the nurse looked at me. She was like, Stephanie, you better be glad you came in here because this was going to get really bad. And when she told me that, I was like shocked. And then I was like scared. And then I was like unsure about myself. And my doula was like, Stephanie, this is why we've got to know our body. And we can't talk about our bodies when we're pregnant or when we're trying. We need to have these conversations at a very young age about what's going on with our bodies. How do our bodies, what do we do with our bodies? And it doesn't mean just the person that's giving birth should be responsible for knowing that information. We need everyone to be on board with understanding the information, where to find resources, how to connect with those things, and bringing them all back together. Lo, we're coming down to the final part of our interview today. If you had your top 5 reasons to get a doula, what are your top 5?
So I feel like I have way more than 5, but
I know that is the hard part.
Right. One being get a doula because you want somebody that fits you energetically and culturally. Get you a doula because they help decrease the chances of medical intervention. Get you a doula because you want to have somebody that can support you and your partner, because your partner also needs support through your pregnancy and through the birth and through postpartum. Yes. It is a team effort. For another reason to get a doula is to basically have a doula, a sister, a mom, an auntie, kind of all in one that can love on you and your baby through your journey and help you reconnect with your body. And my 5th reason to get a doula is because you want to have somebody that can advocate for you and help you remember your power in birthing.
Ooh, that was good. Okay, another top 5. You're a new doula. You just finished your training. What are the top 5 things that you absolutely wish you could have gotten, or you needed, or you couldn't afford, or maybe you got them all? I don't know. What are the top 5 things that a new doula needs to absolutely have? The reason why we're asking this question, y'all, we just got that new funding for us to actually provide funding to people who want to become a doula that are people of color in the Spokane community. This is considered a doula desert. And so we are going to be recruiting and building the workforce. So we want to know, what is your top 5? What are the 5 things that you feel as a new doula you absolutely need for your families, or just for you to do your work better?
Yeah.
And there's no limit to cost if you just have all the money in the world.
Okay. So another one that I have way more than 5 for. Definitely get a mentor that also aligns with you and values, shared morals and values, and your ideas for how you want your own birth practice to look. Someone that can inspire you and, of course, like guide you. You don't want somebody that has like a superiority complex over you or anything. You want somebody that sees you guys as equals, and they're just being a guiding vessel. Number 2, I would also say get you like a list of things that you keep in your doula bag. So anytime something is low, or you run out, or possibly lose something or leave it at a birth, that can happen. That way you always have a checklist of your doula bag, so you're never without something at a birth. I can also say for number 3, let's see. Oh, there's so many that I want to say.
I know, this one's hard.
It is. Number 3, I would say for like aspiring doulas, find a training that also aligns with what you want to be covered in your doula practice, or what you absolutely feel like you want to learn or have knowledge in, because every training does not do the same things. Yep. I mean, I've seen people go into trainings blindly and come out of it like, I wish I didn't do that. So finding a training that really fits for you as well. Number 4, I would also say make sure you have a good support system around yourself too, whether that be your family, whether that be a loving spouse or partner, Like, make sure you have a good support system around you, especially if you're a birth worker with kids, or if you're a birth worker that has to take care of like elders in your family or anything like that. Like for me, it's like not having kids is a whole separate thing. So it's like my life is a little more flexible, but I think about my doula sisters and siblings that got kids and like how scheduling is really hard for them because of the support systems that are around them, or because that, or lack thereof. So a good support system around you as a birth worker is so needed, because I cannot tell you how many times I've like been about to rush out to a birth and like forgot to eat, and my wife is like, nope, got your dinner made, here, take it with you. Or like I come home and like, you know, something's already made for me to eat because I've been gone for half a day or a whole day or something like that. And so like having that support, those little things that people really tend to you because you're tending to so many other people, you need that as a birth worker. So for sure, support system for number 4. And number 5, I would say, make sure you have your own spiritual practices or rituals or ceremonies around how you show up in birth spaces or how you show up in postpartum. Like, for example, I always have a ritual before I attend a birth, and I always have one after I attend a birth. And I always do kind of a little thing on my way to the birth as well. And so having little things like where you can help reset yourself after you've been giving so much of yourself to other people, that is number 5 for sure. Make sure you have your own grounding methods or practices that help you rejuvenate.
That's deep. That's deep. I love that top 5. Y'all, we're coming to the end of our podcast. We are getting ready to wrap it up. I want to thank you all for listening. You listen, it's Black Maternal Health Week, okay? And listen, it's Black Maternal Health every day, okay? We need to be focusing on how to crush this crisis. And we need to make sure that we are working together collectively as a community to do so. So what's your last word of advice to our listeners? What's the one thing that you want them to hear before we close out?
I would like to say that whether you are a doula, aspiring doula, expecting parent, you're on your fertility journey, or you just had a baby, remember your power and don't let anybody take it from you.
Love it. Love it. Okay. Now, if they want to call you, they want to hit you up, they want your training, they want you to doula, they want all the things, where do they find you?
Yeah. So my website is loholistics.com. And then my Instagram and TikTok is lo.holistics. And then my Facebook is Doula Lo.
There it is, y'all. Listen, thank you again for coming by and learning about these doulas out here. You guys, listen, I want you to know I'm out here finding amazing people, bringing them right to the table to talk to us about their work, their practices. There's so many of us that are doulas, that are working in strategy, that are working in advocacy, that are working on policy and strategy. We've got to listen to the lived experience so that we do not mess this up. We have to make sure that we're working collectively. We're keeping this space clear and pure, and we're keeping it in a space where people can advocate and do the things that they love, and it will also connect with people in the way that they need to be connected to in such a vulnerable place or space. Y'all, thank you so much. Until next time, see you soon. And remember, when all else fails, girl, get yourself a doula. If you enjoyed this podcast today, make sure that you stay connected with Doula Lo. You can reach her at any of these platforms. I'm telling you, you're going to learn some amazing things. Don't miss out.